Malika slammed the pantry door and turned the key. She had counted. 3 jars of imported tomato paste gone. 2 bottles of olive oil gone. The Kenyan forest honey Daniel had bought her for her birthday, the one she had been saving carefully since January, gone. She stood in the kitchen with the key pressed into her palm until the metal teeth left a mark on her skin. Then she breathed. She was done asking nicely. Nia came around the corner eating an orange, peeling it with her teeth like she owned the floor she walked on. She stopped when she saw the padlock. Her eyes moved from the pantry to Malika's face. "Is that a lock?" Nia asked. "It is," Malika said. "On the kitchen pantry?" "Yes." Nia laughed. The kind of laugh that was not meant to enjoy anything, but to belittle someone. "Malika, this is my brother's house. You cannot be locking food from family." She bit into the orange and let the juice run down her wrist without wiping it. Malika looked at her calmly. "When you buy something in this house, let me know. Then we will talk about what belongs to family." Before Nia could respond, Mama Grace appeared in the hallway. The woman had a presence that entered a room before she did. Bright wrapper. Louder opinions. And a permanent expression that suggested the world owed her comfort. She had arrived 3 weeks ago with 4 bags and the energy of someone who intended to stay forever. "What is happening here?" Mama Grace demanded. Nia pointed at the padlock. "Mama, look what your wife put on the pantry. She is locking food." Mama Grace's eyes widened. She turned slowly toward Malika, as if giving her one final chance to undo the insult. "You locked the food?" "I locked my things, Ma." "Your things?" Mama Grace stepped forward. "Everything in this house belongs to my son. You are the wife. You manage what he provides. You do not lock anything in this house. Not from me. Not from your husband's sister. Not from anyone." She said it like it had been written in scripture. Malika tucked the key into her dress pocket and walked away. If you are watching this for the first time, subscribe right now and turn on the bell, because this story is going to shake you. Now, let us go back. 4 months earlier, Daniel had carried Malika over the threshold of the Nairobi mansion. And she had laughed so hard she almost slipped from his arms. The compound was gated. The ceilings were high. The floors were the kind of polished stone that made every footstep sound important. Outside, the hills of Karen stretched quietly under the afternoon sun. Daniel kissed her in the doorway. Long. Slow. The kind of kiss that made her forget what year it was. His hands were on her face, and she pulled him closer, and they stayed there until the gateman coughed from outside. "Our house," Daniel whispered against her lips. "Our house," she repeated. But she was the one who had paid for it. Not half. Not most. All of it. Her business. Her savings. Her name on the title deed at the land registry. Daniel's salary had covered the generator and the curtains. And he was so proud of that contribution that she did not have the heart to explain what the curtains cost compared to the building. She loved him. She wanted him to feel proud too. So she let him celebrate. She let him call it ours. She smiled when he took pictures in the compound and sent them to his family WhatsApp group. She said nothing. That was her first mistake. The second mistake was thinking love would protect her. The morning Mama Grace arrived, Malika had prepared the guest room herself. Fresh sheets. A new fan. Bottled water on the bedside table. She had even placed a small flower vase by the window because Daniel had said his mother liked color. When the Sienna van honked at the gate, Malika went outside to welcome her with both hands extended. But Mama Grace stepped down, looked at the building from bottom to top, and said, "My son has done well. Not you both. Not, your home is beautiful. My son." Nia came out behind her, sunglasses on, rolling a suitcase that looked like it contained a second life. 2 cousins followed. Then an auntie Malika had never heard of. Then a woman carrying a cooler of smoked fish. Malika kept her smile in place. "Welcome, everyone. Come in. Come in." Daniel hugged his mother for a long time. He was so happy. He looked like a boy again. Malika watched him, and her heart softened without permission. This was why she had done it. This was why she had stretched herself financially until the elastic nearly snapped. Because seeing him like this, full and proud and warm, made something in her chest ache with love. She just did not know then that the people he let in would make that love very difficult to hold. By the second week, the household had shifted in a way Malika could feel in her bones. The kitchen was always occupied. The living room television was always on full volume. Nia moved from the guest room into the larger room beside the master bedroom without asking. And the pantry. The pantry was being treated like a public market. Malika tracked it quietly. She was a businesswoman. Numbers were her language. One evening, she opened her phone and began adding everything up. Groceries. Toiletries. Gas. Extra electricity units. The tilapia Nia had requested for stew. The bottles of malt Mama Grace drank 3 times a day. By the time Malika reached the bottom of the list, the figure was sitting above 400,000 Kenyan shillings for the month. Daniel's contribution to the house? 50,000. She put her phone down and looked at the ceiling for a long time. That night, she turned to him in the dark. "Daniel, we need to talk about the household expenses." He turned over slowly. "What about them?" "I am spending over 400,000 a month. You give me 50. He was quiet. "I am not complaining," she said carefully. "I am saying we need to reorganize. Maybe your mother and Nia can contribute something, or we limit the spending." Daniel's voice changed. "Malika, these are my people. I will not put a price on feeding my family. I am not putting a price on anyone. I am telling you I am carrying this alone, and I need help. You are my wife. This is what wives do." She stared at the ceiling. The ceiling stared back. She did not say another word that night. The next evening, Nia had a man in the living room. Malika walked in from work at 6, her laptop bag on one shoulder, her heels still on. And there he was. A man she had never seen before, sitting on her cream sofa with his shoes on the rug, a plate of her food on the center table in front of him, laughing at something Nia had said with the ease of someone who had been coming there for years. Nia sat beside him, legs tucked under her, head tilted back in laughter. Malika stood in the doorway. The man noticed her first and straightened slightly. Nia turned, saw her, and did not flinch. "Malika, this is Kevin. A friend." Malika set her bag down slowly. "Good evening," she said to the man. Then she looked at Nia. "Can I see you in the kitchen?" It was not a question. "I in the kitchen." Nia leaned against the counter with her arms folded like she was the one who had been inconvenienced. "What is the problem now?" she asked. "You brought a man I do not know into my home without telling me. I live here. You are a guest here. There is a difference." Nia's eyes narrowed. "My brother owns this house. I have every right to bring whoever I want. Malika looked at her for a long moment. Ask him to leave tonight. And from now on, if you want to receive visitors in this house, you will inform me first. Nia laughed again. That same hollow laugh. Inform you? You are not my mother. No, Malika said. I am the woman whose house you are sleeping in for free. Ask him to leave. Daniel heard about it before Malika could tell him herself. Mama Grace had gotten there first. He came to find Malika in the bedroom with his voice already tightened. Why did you embarrass my sister in front of her guest? Malika was removing her earrings at the mirror. She looked at his reflection. I asked an unknown man to leave my living room. That is not embarrassment. That is boundaries. She is my sister, Malika. She is not a tenant. She needed my permission to use my kitchen to cook for a man I have never met. You are being difficult. She turned from the mirror and faced him directly. Daniel, a strange man was eating food I bought, on a sofa I paid for, in a house I own. What exactly would you like me to have done? He opened his mouth. Then closed it. You always bring it back to money. Because money is what is keeping this house standing. He walked out. She turned back to the mirror. Her reflection looked tired. The wigs disappeared on a Thursday. Malika opened her wardrobe and found the shelf where she kept her two best pieces empty. She checked behind the boxes. She checked the bathroom. Then she stood in the middle of the room, knowing exactly where they were. She found Nia getting ready to go out. Dressed up. Perfumed. And wearing the dark brown lace wig that had cost Malika a fortune. Take it off, Malika said from the doorway. Nia looked up. I was going to return it. Take it off. It is just a wig, Malika. You act like I took your kidney. The two of them together cost over 1 million shillings. Malika's voice was steady, but her hands were not. 1 million shillings that you did not ask about, did not request, and did not tell me you were touching. Nia rolled her eyes, then removed it slowly, making a show of her irritation. She dropped it on the dressing table like it was nothing. Malika picked it up and walked back to her room. She sat on the edge of the bed. She was not going to cry. She refused to cry over a wig in her own house. But it was not really about the wig. And she knew it. That Saturday, she cooked to prove something to no one in particular. Mama Grace had made a comment at breakfast. Casual. Deliberate. The way women like her weaponized words. She spoke about how a real wife kept her husband fed and her home warm. How some women were too busy chasing careers to remember what a kitchen was for. She had set it to the ceiling. But everyone in the room knew who it was for. So Malika went to the market. She bought fresh tilapia. She bought sukuma, onions, tomatoes, peppers, and spices. She stood in that kitchen for 3 hours and made a pot of stew that smelled like effort and dignity. She set the table herself. She called everyone to eat. Mama Grace ate 2 full plates and a third she claimed was small. She did not say a word to Malika. Not thank you. Not well done. Nothing. She wiped her hands and asked Nia if there was cold malt in the fridge. Daniel squeezed Malika's hand under the table. He whispered, it was perfect. She smiled at him. She still loved him. That was the most complicated part of all of this. Like this video if you are feeling Malika's pain right now, because what happens next is going to make your jaw drop. Mama Grace called a family meeting on a Sunday evening. She said it was for prayers. She had been saying that a lot lately. Let us pray together. Let us call on God over this family. Let us cover this house. Malika sat beside Daniel on the sofa, held her hands together in her lap, and bowed her head when the prayers started. Then the praying stopped. Mama Grace said, "I want to introduce someone to this family." Malika opened her eyes. A girl stepped out from the hallway. She was young. Very young. With a wrapper tied around her chest and her eyes on the floor. She was pretty in a soft, uncertain way, like someone who had been told to be small and had practiced it. She stood in the middle of the living room and folded her hands in front of her. Mama Grace cleared her throat. "Wanjiru," she said, "God has been speaking to me." Then she turned to the room. "My son needs a woman in this home who is fully available." Malika stared at her. "A woman who will be here when he needs comfort. A woman who will not be too tired. A woman who will give this family children and peace." Mama Grace looked directly at Malika when she said the last word. "I have prayed. I have consulted." Then she lifted her chin. "Wanjiru will be Daniel's second wife." The room became completely silent. Malika turned slowly to Daniel. He was looking at the floor. "Daniel," she said quietly. "Look at me." He looked up. "Did you know about this?" He exhaled through his nose. "Mama means well." "Did you know?" He said nothing. And silence was its own answer. Malika stood up. She looked at Wanjiru. The girl had not moved. Still staring at the floor. And in another life, Malika might have felt sorry for her, because she was clearly only a tool in someone else's hand. Then she looked at Mama Grace. Then at Nia, who was watching from the corner with her arms folded, waiting to see what Malika would do. Malika walked upstairs without a word. She sat in the dark for a long time. She thought about the doorway 4 months ago. Daniel's hands on her face. Our house. The way she had believed him completely. She thought about the title deed in the folder at the bottom of her wardrobe. She had thought she understood power. Now she understood it differently. She picked up her phone. She made 2 calls. The first was to her lawyer. The second was to a property developer who had been calling her about the area for months. When she came downstairs, her face was different. Not angry. Not broken. Something had settled in her eyes that had not been there before. The way a storm looks right before it organizes itself into something that cannot be ignored. She sat down across from Daniel, who was alone in the living room. Mama Grace, Nia, and Wanjiru had gone to the guest room. "I need to ask you something," Malika said. Daniel looked at her carefully. "Answer me one question." Her voice was soft. "Whose house is this?" He frowned. "We are married." "Whose name is on the title deed?" Silence. "Whose savings paid the deposit?" Daniel looked away. "Whose account did the bank deduct from every month for 14 months? He swallowed. "Whose signature is at the land registry?" He finally looked back at her. "Where are you going with this?" Malika stood slowly. "To bed." Then she turned toward the stairs. "But tomorrow morning, I need you downstairs by 8. She paused. "There is something I want to show everyone." Behind her, Daniel sat alone in the big, empty quiet of a house he had thought was his. She was already dressed when Daniel woke up. He found her sitting at the dining table at exactly 7:45 a.m. A folder rested in front of her. A cup of tea sat untouched beside it. She was not on her phone. Not reading. Not moving. just sitting there with the stillness of someone who had already made every decision they needed to make and was simply waiting for the rest of the world to catch up. Malika. Daniel sat across from her carefully. Can we talk before everyone comes downstairs? We can talk now, she said calmly. Or we can talk when they are here. Either way, the conversation ends the same. He reached across the table and covered her hand with his. I am sorry about last night. My mother, she does not think before she acts sometimes. I will talk to her. Wanjiru will go back. I promise you. Malika looked at his hand on hers. She remembered when that hand was all she needed to feel safe. Slowly, she turned her palm upward and laced her fingers through his. Then she looked at him with something that lived painfully between love and disappointment. Daniel, she said softly, when I was building this house, I used to call you from the construction site and describe what each room would look like. Do you remember? He nodded slowly. I told you the master bedroom would face east so the morning light would enter first. I told you the kitchen would have an island because I wanted us to cook together on Sundays. I planned every corner of this place with you in my mind. Her voice remained steady. And then your family came in and treated it like a hotel. Daniel lowered his eyes. You watched them take from me and said nothing. You watched your mother insult me at my own table and said nothing. You watched your sister walk around in my things and said nothing. Her eyes sharpened. And then your mother brought another woman into my living room to replace me. She leaned closer. And you looked at the floor. Daniel's jaw tightened painfully. I was not going to let that happen. You already did. The words landed quietly. The moment you said nothing, you let it happen. He slowly pulled his hand back. Footsteps sounded on the staircase. Mama Grace came down first in her wrapper. Nia followed behind her. Wanjiru came last, silent as a shadow, sitting carefully at the far end of the table where nobody had invited her. Mama Grace looked at the folder. What is this? Are we signing papers this morning? Yes, Malika said. She opened the folder. Then calmly placed the title deed at the center of the table. Mama Grace picked it up. Her eyes moved slowly across the page. Then she placed it down again and looked at Malika with an expression struggling very hard to stay dismissive. What is this supposed to mean? It means the house belongs to me. Silence. My name. My purchase. My property. Mama Grace straightened immediately. You are a married woman. Whatever you own belongs to the family. That is not what the law says. I am not talking about law, Mama Grace snapped. I am talking about what is right. Malika leaned forward slowly. You came into my house and ate my food and used my things and said nothing here belonged to me. You brought another woman into my home to take my husband and called it God's will. You told me I was a guest in the place I built. Then she tapped the title deed gently with one finger. So now I am showing you whose home this actually is. Nia slapped the table. Malika, this is wickedness. Pure wickedness. After everything my brother has done for you. Name one thing. Nia stopped. Malika's voice remained calm. Name one thing your brother paid for in this house. One bill. One installment. One receipt with his name on it. She tilted her head slightly. Take your time. Nia opened her mouth. Then closed it. Daniel stood up from the table and walked toward the window. His back faced all of them now. His shoulders carried something heavy and visible. Mama Grace's voice dropped dangerously low. You want to use paper to divide a family? You want to use money to humiliate my son in his own house? He has no house, Malika said quietly. The silence after that sentence felt physical. And that truth hurts you, she continued. I understand that. But I will not sit in a building I created and be told I own nothing inside it. At exactly 9 a.m., she made the call. By 10:15, a moving truck reversed slowly through the compound gate. Mama Grace rushed outside screaming. What is this? What is happening? Daniel, come and see what your wife is doing. The workers moved efficiently. Professionally. Like men being paid well not to ask questions. The cream sofas went first. Then the dining set. Then the appliances. The imported refrigerator. The freezer. The washing machine. Malika stood in the compound with a clipboard directing everything calmly. Her voice never rose once. Nia grabbed her arm. You cannot do this. Malika looked down at the hand gripping her. Then slowly back up into Nia's face. Remove your hand from me. Something in her eyes made Nia step backward immediately. I am not removing your personal belongings, Malika announced loudly enough for everyone to hear. Your clothes. Your bags. Whatever you personally brought here stays yours. Then she gestured toward the truck. But everything I bought leaves with me. She turned toward Daniel, who stood frozen in the doorway. You are welcome to the structure. Her voice stayed perfectly level. I was told it belongs to the man of the house. Then she looked around the compound. He can furnish it however he likes. Mama Grace dropped into a chair in the middle of the yard and began wailing loudly. God punish you, Malika. God punish you. Enough. Everyone froze. Daniel had never spoken to his mother like that before. Not once. He walked slowly down the steps and stood between his wife and his mother. And suddenly he looked exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. Enough, he repeated quietly. Mama Grace stared at him in disbelief. Daniel. I said enough. An hour later, Daniel found Malika upstairs in the bedroom packing a suitcase. Not everything. Just enough. Her movements were quiet and organized. The way she did everything. He stood in the doorway. Where are you going? Somewhere quiet for a while. Malika. His voice cracked slightly on her name. I know I failed you. She continued folding clothes. I know I stood there and let things go too far. I kept telling myself I was keeping peace. He swallowed hard. But really, I was choosing comfort over you. Finally, she stopped moving. You watched me fight alone. I know. You watched your mother disrespect me in the house I built. I know. You watched another woman get introduced as your wife while I sat there. Daniel crossed the room slowly and stopped behind her. I know. His voice was barely holding together now. And I am sorry. She still did not turn around. I know sorry is not enough. But I do not know what else to say except that I love you. Silence. And this house means nothing without you in it. Slowly, Malika turned to face him. His eyes were red. She had only seen Daniel cry twice before. Once at his father's burial. And once the night she told him the house was finally complete. She looked at him now and felt the complicated weight of loving someone who had disappointed her completely. Your mother leaves today, she said quietly. Yes. Your sister leaves today. Yes. Wanjiro leaves today. Yes. And after that, we talk properly. Nobody else in this house. Just us. Yes. Then she stepped closer. Close enough that he could have kissed her. But instead she looked directly into his eyes. And Daniel. He waited. If you ever stand in a room again while someone disrespects me and finds something interesting to look at on the floor. Her voice became softer. I will not bring a truck next time. A pause. I will simply leave. Daniel nodded slowly. And for the first time in weeks, he finally understood how close he had come to losing everything. By 5 p.m., the compound was quiet again. Not empty. Different. Mama Grace and Mia had packed their things into the Sienna van and left without saying goodbye to Malika. Mama Grace walked past her with her chin raised high and her wrapper rustling behind her like wounded pride-made fabric. Mia dragged her suitcase herself this time. No laughter. No comments. No confidence left. Wanjiru had been collected earlier that afternoon by a relative. Still quiet. Still looking at the floor. Gone almost as silently as she had arrived. Then finally, the gate closed. And for the first time in weeks, the house belonged only to the two people who were supposed to live there. Daniel and Malika stood together in the compound without speaking. The evening light stretched orange across the marble floors through the open front door. The house echoed slightly now that half the furniture was gone. But somehow, it finally felt peaceful again. Real again. Like it had felt on the first day. Back when they stood in that doorway laughing and kissing before the rest of the world entered with opinions and entitlement. Daniel reached slowly for her hand. She let him take it. I almost lost you, he said quietly. Malika looked ahead toward the sunset instead of at him. Yes. No drama. No shouting. Just truth. And somehow that hurt him more. They walked slowly back into the house together. The living room looked strange, half empty. But it also looked honest. Like a room that had finally stopped pretending. Daniel sat heavily on the edge of the remaining sofa and rubbed both hands over his face. I keep replaying everything, he admitted quietly. The pantry. The wigs. The insults. The meeting. He swallowed hard. And every memory ends the same way. Malika sat across from him silently. I am standing there doing nothing. The shame in his voice was real now. Not defensive. Not performative. Real. I thought being a good man meant avoiding conflict. Malika finally looked at him. No. Her voice was calm. Being a good man means protecting what matters even when conflict comes. Daniel nodded slowly. I know that now. Silence settled between them again. Not cold silence. Tired silence. The kind two people reach after surviving something ugly together. Finally, Daniel spoke again. When my father was alive, he said quietly, he never disagreed with my mother in public. Malika listened carefully. I think somewhere inside me, I learned that keeping her happy was the same thing as being a good son. He laughed once bitterly. But I became such a good son that I stopped being a good husband. That landed heavily in the room. Because it was true. Malika leaned back slowly. You know the worst part? Daniel looked up. I never hated your family. Her voice softened slightly. I wanted them to love me. That hurt him visibly. I cooked for them. I welcomed them. I paid for everything happily. Her eyes drifted toward the kitchen. I was proud that your mother felt comfortable here." Then she looked back at him. But comfort slowly turned into entitlement. And entitlement eventually turned into disrespect. Daniel lowered his head again. "You are right." Malika watched him quietly for a long moment. Then finally she stood up. "Come." He looked confused. "Where?" "To the kitchen." A small frown crossed his face. "What for?" "You said this house means nothing without me in it." She turned toward the kitchen. "So now we rebuild it properly." For the first time that entire day, the corner of Daniel's mouth almost smiled. The kitchen still smelled faintly like spices and tea. Malika opened the refrigerator and took out vegetables. Daniel rolled up his sleeves quietly beside her. And together, for the first time in months, they cooked. Not because anyone demanded it from her. Not because his mother was watching. Not because she needed to prove she was a real wife. But because peace had finally returned to the room. Daniel chopped onions badly. Malika laughed despite herself. "You are terrible at this. You married me anyway. That was before I saw your knife skills." He smiled weakly. And for a brief moment, they almost looked like the couple they used to be. Almost. Later that night, after dinner, they sat together on the floor of the half-empty living room eating quietly from the same plate. No television. No shouting from guest rooms. No tension sitting in the corners. Just stillness. Daniel finally spoke into the quiet. "What happens now?" Malika thought for a moment. "Now?" She looked around slowly. "Now we decide whether this marriage deserves a second beginning." His eyes lifted to hers immediately. "And does it?" She studied him carefully. Love was still there. That was the dangerous part. But now something else had to exist beside love. Respect. Protection. Partnership. Without those things, love eventually rotted under pressure. Finally she answered softly. "I do not know yet." Daniel nodded. And strangely, that honesty gave him more hope than false reassurance would have. Weeks passed. The house slowly filled again. Not with relatives. With peace. Daniel changed in quiet ways first. He stopped avoiding difficult conversations. He corrected his mother the next time she insulted Malika over the phone. He started contributing more financially without being asked. He listened more. Defended faster. Paid attention. And Malika noticed. Not because he announced the changes. Because consistency always speaks louder than apologies. One evening, months later, they stood together on the upstairs balcony watching rain move across Nairobi in silver sheets. Daniel wrapped an arm slowly around her waist. This time she leaned into him naturally. Not out of habit. Out of choice. "You know something," he said quietly. "What?" "When we first moved here." He smiled faintly. "I thought the house was the blessing." Malika looked up at him. "And now?" He kissed her forehead gently. "Now I know the blessing was the woman who built it." For a moment neither of them spoke. Rain tapped softly against the railing. Traffic lights flickered far below them in the city. And somewhere inside herself, Malika realized something important. Strength had not destroyed her marriage. Silence almost had. A woman who knows her worth is not difficult. She is simply impossible to erase. And sometimes love survives. Not because people never fail each other. but because one of them finally learns that protecting peace is not the same thing as protecting love. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, the house she built was never just walls and marble. It was dignity. And the moment she defended it, she defended herself.